Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneurs Show, where we celebrate the innovators driving change in the education industry. At Edison OS, we've worked with over 500 knowledge entrepreneurs to turn their edtech ideas into profitable businesses. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneur Show. Thanks so much for taking time out for this.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
Likewise, Lisa. Lisa, my first question is how did you're a writer, you started writing. How did you get into the work of helping people with admissions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself and kind of my college admissions journey here. So I studied English at Columbia University over in New York, was kind of on track to get a PhD for quite a while. That has always been my dream since childhood, was to become an English professor and then write on the side. And sort of halfway through graduate school, I just realized that what I had wanted my whole life just wasn't a particularly good fit for me. I do tend to be more of a social person. I like interacting with people. There were a couple of things in my department that I didn't really like, and all of these things sort of piled up from also a financial perspective as well. And I thought, well, maybe being an English professor is not my path. And that was just a really big setback for me. This also happened the year of COVID, actually, in 2020. I withdrew from my graduate program, and I thought, well, now what? And, I had a little bit of time to think because it was COVID, because there wasn't much going on. And I started just tutoring students on the side. I'd always done a lot of tutoring in various capacities while I was in undergraduate and graduate school. So I did a little bit more tutoring just to get some extra cash. And then I landed a job in copywriting, actually, so in the advertising industry. I was at that job for 3 weeks and I quit, and I said, this isn't for me either. It wasn't my thing. I did enjoy more of the social component there, but some of the products I was advertising were just so wildly outlandish. I was like, I can't do this. So then I got another job. At that point I just started spam applying to jobs, because I just said, okay, well, I can't be here anymore. I need to get out of here as soon as humanly possible. And I landed a job at a college consulting firm, kind of full time. And I had a lot of kind of ideological disagreements with that particular firm. I really liked what I did, but I did not really like how they run themselves. It was a very big company. So I really just wanted to be in a space that treated students as students instead of treating students as kind of a corporate environment. And I think that company created a very much like corporate environment for college consulting. And I thought that's a little bit weird, because that's not what education is at all. And we shouldn't be, running ourselves like a Silicon Valley tech startup if it's a company for students. So I left from that company, and then I started doing basically freelance work in college admissions consulting and tutoring. I was at that point really just taking on every single opportunity that came my way. I think I had something like 7 or 8 part-time jobs at one point a couple of years ago, and those part-time jobs just basically gave me a full work day, because I had maybe 2 hours of work here, 2 hours of work there, and I was working a lot. And I was actually doing a lot better financially than I had at a full-time job, because I was now getting paid hourly, and I had tax write-offs, that sort of thing. So I thought, okay, well, it's too much to juggle all of these different companies. Let's just cut out the middleman, and let's just start kind of taking clients directly. And that was difficult at first. One of my friends helped me start up the company Invictus Prep, and I was very passionate about helping students with their writing, to go back to kind of the English writing component of this. And I wanted to find a way to help students become strong writers, because that's something that I saw was lacking in the sort of college consulting industry. There was a lot of emphasis on what we call narrative building and helping students figure out, what is their story that they're going to tell to college, and that's all fine and well. But there's a little bit less emphasis on the essay, because a lot of people who go into college consulting are not writers. So they're they're maybe, decent at helping students with essays, but they don't have the kind of writing prowess that a writer might have. So I think that's really what I wanted to bring to Invictus is my own writing background. And Invictus, the name, is actually named after a poem. So a lot of the company, I think, has my own creative writing aptitude. And we do, a lot of work with kind of teaching students to write from kind of creative writing perspective. And I think that really helps them with the college essay later down the road. So it's actually really, really fantastic because I get to use my aptitude for writing and I get to work with students at the same time. So I found this happy medium where I get to talk to people, which I really love doing. And I also get to do writing. And I think that is maybe a little bit of a rare combination. I think a lot of writers tend to be just very deeply introverted. So I always found that I never quite fit in a lot of writing spaces or maybe a lot of higher education spaces because I'm very much a mix of both. I like writing and I like doing quiet things, but I also need to have my kind of social interaction. So I think the company very much fulfills both of those roles for me. And I was just, so excited when this thing started growing. And now we have actually 20 people working for the company, which is insane because we've only been around for about 2.5 years now. So I'm so proud with where we came from, how far it's gotten, and really, really looking forward to the future of Invictus Prep.
Wow, awesome. It sounds like you kind of found your ikigai there.
Yeah.
That was a nice way of, putting the flow of how you got to your ikigai. So that's great, Liza. Liza, you said you started off tutoring for students, right? I mean, was that just tutoring in writing in general, or was it test prep tutoring?
Yeah, so I did basically everything you could possibly think of. That year that I was just freelancing, I did that for actually less than a year, maybe like 7 or 8 months. I was doing a lot of freelancing stuff before I could just fully support myself with the company. I basically took on anything that I could do. I had a student I was tutoring in Russian. I speak Russian. So I had a Russian student.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was tutoring in one of the U.S. history courses. I had a student I was tutoring in test prep. I did a lot of test prep. I was tutoring math at that point, the math and science section of the ACT, for instance. So I actually did a lot of test prep. I enjoy writing obviously more, and I think test prep for me is just it's more cookie cutter. So we do have a test prep branch at Invictus. I no longer do any tutoring myself. I like the college consulting a little bit more because I think it's a little bit more personal and I get to connect with students more than the tutoring where it's just really we're going over concepts. And most of our tutoring clients, I would say, come to us for STEM tutoring specifically. So we get maybe fewer students who are taking those advanced like reading, writing courses, which is fine. I would tutor those, but I think just because most tutoring tends to be STEM oriented, at least from our clientele, I no longer do the tutoring myself. I delegate that. We have a really great tutoring team. We have a lovely head of tutoring. Her name is Maya. She's fantastic and kind of oversees all of the tutoring at Invictus here. So yeah, I think I started off mostly tutoring, and the way I actually got into college consulting, the first year was one of my students, we did the SAT, and I was working for a very big company, you've probably heard of it, Varsity Tutors, kind of part-time. Yeah. So that was actually my first ever tutoring job. I got that job when I was like 18. So that year I was either in college or maybe it was my first year of graduate school. So that was very early on in my career. So I was working with him for the SAT, and then he had a package and he said, okay, I have a couple of hours left with you. Can you help me with my essay? And I said, yeah, sure. I can do essays. I'm studying English. That's great. Let me help out. And I did. I kind of inadvertently got into college consulting through that particular student who needed help on his essays. And I realized I actually like this much more than the tutoring because I get to interact with students' personal stories. And so much of that student, he was very much struggled telling his story. We actually had to rewrite his essay like 2 weeks before the deadline because he wasn't happy with it and he didn't know what quite to do. So we rewrote a couple of things. And I found that experience very fulfilling because I really got to know him as a person. And that's something I think you don't get as much with the tutoring side of things. So the reason I love working with
Right.
college essay is at the end of the day, it's personal essay writing. And I actually do a lot of personal essay writing myself. Just on the side, I have a couple of personal essays published in various outlets. So I love personal essay writing. I think that every person has their unique story, and I love hearing students' unique stories. And that's why I love working with the college essay, because it's so personal, and it taps into this component of writing that I love, which is essentially talking about the human experience. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. And so, when I go to your website, it mainly speaks about consulting for
Yep.
admissions. And what does it encompass? Because is it just essay writing, or what are the other things that it encompasses?
Yeah. So the way we tackle college consulting is we divide it into three main buckets. So in our package, you get access to all of these buckets, but we basically present it to parents as we'll do basically three separate things. The first that we'll start with is narrative building, which we like to think of as helping students create their profiles for college. So we get a lot of students younger, kind of 9th, 10th grade. So those students will primarily focus on narrative building. That is, what is the story that we want to tell colleges? So we help them identify their interests. We help them identify opportunities. So we talk about scholarships. We talk about activities that they can do at school. That we talk about internships that they might be able to secure. We talk about summer programs. We sometimes help them build out projects. But it's essentially helping them figure out what it is that they like to do that is fulfilling, but in an organized way that'll help them with their future. And my goal with Invictus, I actually have an article coming out on my Substack, which is kind of a publication where I write a lot about kind of my philosophy of Ivy League admissions. In a couple days, I'll send that over to you. But in that article, I essentially talk about the way our philosophy is that students find the most fulfillment by inadvertently pleasing admissions officers. So we actually work kind of backwards. We don't focus on what admissions officers want to see from students. We focus on what students are passionate about and really helping them hone that passion in a systematic way so that every day they're doing things for college admissions, but they don't realize it because they love doing it so much. So I think that's the proper approach from the narrative building perspective. Then we have the career coaching. The most college admissions consulting companies, I think, don't really talk about this. And I think that it's a little bit unfortunate because I do think that we have a little bit of a career education problem in America, at least, where students aren't really taught what paths there are out there. Everyone knows, okay, you can become a doctor, you can become a lawyer, you can go into, tech or finance or whatnot. But there's so many other career opportunities out there that in many cases are actually more lucrative than becoming a doctor or lawyer. So I think we have these kind of set buckets, and then students don't really know what else is out there. And there's so many different things that you can do that I like to teach students about. And then there's a lot of kind of nebulousness in this world of finance, for instance. So we have a lot of students who, come to us, they're interested in economics. They really have no idea what finance is. They have no idea, they've never heard of something like consulting. And they don't really learn that until, I would say, very late into college. And what happens then is students are just so stressed. And I had this experience when I was an undergraduate student at Columbia. People were just learning about this. Everyone was stressed. I was not, thank God, trying to do all of that with the kind of finance consulting side. But because I think there's just a very much lack of transparency in terms of what the career world looks like, I think a lot of students just end up being lost. And I think the reason we don't talk about this is because there's this philosophy, well, students will figure it out. Let's not stress out the kids when they're kids. But I think on the other hand, then they get stressed out as adults. So what I like to do is I like to produce some of these. I don't, we're not having conversations in terms of, okay, what do you need to put on your resume right now to get recruited by, this big financial bank, right? We're not talking about that. That's not the conversation. The conversation is, okay, well, you like finance. Great. Why do you like finance? What appeals to you about, let's say, the market, right? maybe there's, this bucket of finance that you could look into. Maybe you like kind of working more with people. Maybe you want to have more of like a people facing role. Maybe you want to have more of like a math facing role. So we just start up these conversations and then we help the students identify some activities. There are a lot of hedge funds in the US that will actually ask you on the application what math competitions you did when you were in high school. And
Wow.
it's so hilarious. So, if I have a student and they say, okay, I'm interested in finance, and they are thinking of applying to this category of hedge funds, then I'll say, well, okay, we're not going to think about the hedge funds right now, but let's get started on those math competitions because they're going to look at those later on. So that's kind of what we do with students is we help them take a look at, what's ahead in their future. What are the options? I just had the conversation I just had right before this meeting with a student who, like me, she's looking to major in English. And we had a conversation of, okay, well, let's be realistic. I majored in English. I'm not going to, say you shouldn't do that, but let's see what career options are out there so that you don't graduate into, heaps of debt and then all of a sudden, you're a writer making $200 a week, right? Let's figure out what to do so that you can feel financially secure with your life. So that's kind of how we approach the career coaching aspect is we tailor it so that it is relevant for a 16, 17-year-old. We don't do kind of, what you would expect with adult career coaching. We do it specifically
Right.
for 16, 17-year-olds. I think that's a unique thing that we do. I've never seen it actually anywhere else at any other company. So I think that's definitely something that helps us stand out. And then finally, we have obviously the college essay. I would say that's our bread and butter. That's how the company started, from kind of college essay coaching, from my own writing background. That's what the vast majority of students will come to us for, is really just the college essay at the end. So we help them really, draft up, brainstorming. Then we'll do the drafting process. Then we might do a couple of outlines for some colleges as well. So we'll write that personal statement. And then each college also comes with its own set of supplemental essays. So the college admissions world has a lot of things going on at all times. So we'll do, some supplemental essays, and usually, the kids might write like 20 essays in this whole process. So it is a lot of writing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yeah, that's, we kind of guide them through that. We actually, the reason this week is a little bit busy for me is we have a November 15th deadline coming up. So the kids are kind of
Right.
November 15th deadlines now, and they're a little bit panicked, but that'll be over. And then the next deadline is going to be November 30th for a couple of schools in California. And then we'll have the big deadline is January 1st for most US colleges. So right now is our very busy season, and we like to work in waves. And, we help prepare them for every single component of that college application process, from the narrative building to the career coaching to the essay coaching. So we put everything together, and we really do pride ourselves on our holistic approach to education.
Got it, Lisa. Great. So narrative building sounds like it's a part of the essay writing itself, right? I mean, somebody who comes in just write essay, do you put them through narrative building anyway?
So,
Or is narrative building a choice?
we usually do it for younger students. We can. So if someone comes in maybe 6 months before the essay process, then yes, we give them a little bit of narrative building. Usually that entails summer program applications, which is actually very similar to the college essay process. So there are a handful of very competitive summer programs that students will apply to. There's a very big one that's due actually in about a month now at MIT. That's called the Research Science Institute, that a lot of our students will apply to. They take maybe like 20 students a year out of thousands of students who apply. So it's a very, very competitive program. We've had a couple students go in the past, which is really exciting, but that application has something like 6 or 7 essays that they have to answer. So it is very similar, but we're not helping them with the college applications themselves. We're helping them, explore areas of interest that will then help them with the college application. And then those are kind of areas that we'll report as activities in their common application. So we do a lot of different things with them. We'll also maybe help them sometimes build out a project. We have students doing like little coding projects or like research papers, that sort of thing. So it is very, very competitive program. We usually do it for younger students. We can. So we do a lot of different things with them. We'll also maybe help them sometimes build out a project. We have students doing like little coding projects or like research papers, that sort of thing. So It really will depend on the student, but I would say for the most part, we do it with kind of 9th, 10th, and early 11th graders. And then second semester of 11th grade, we start to think about the college application process and talk about the essay more specifically.
Got it, Lisa. And you said, some students end up writing as much as 20 essays before the final essay is finalized.
Yeah.
So basically, how many, is it a flexible thing? I mean, when a student comes to you, do you have this is how many hours it's going to take? Or, if they're going to write 20 essays, does that mean you review each essay? So that means do you spend like, say, 10 hours for it? So in that case, the essay writing, is it a 10-hour thing?
Yeah, so the way we do it is all of our packages are hourly based. So you purchase a set amount of hours with us. Our hours range from 10 to 50. Usually the 50 hours are for the younger students, and then those hours will just carry over to the essay process. Or we have also our pay-as-you-go plan, which is our just hourly, no commitment. We just bill you a session for the session. So we have a lot of flexible plans in that regard, which I think is really great because we have so many different families who are approaching this in a different way. Families also have different budgets for this, right? So we tend to try to work with them to see what makes the most sense for each individual family. For the college application process itself, on average, I would say from start to finish, from the personal statement to the last essay that we write, it takes about 20 hours. Is the average. Some students will get it done in 10, some students take 30. So it will really depend on, the volume of essays that the student is writing and the student's writing quality. So some students they come to me with an essay, we'll maybe just grammar edit it a little bit and then it's done. It's not, they're good writers and it's not a huge process. Some students, they'll come to me with an essay and, that one essay will take 5 hours because they really need extra support with their writing. So it really will, once again, depend on the student. But I would say on average, it's about 20 hours from start to finish of the essay writing.
Got it, Lisa. And do students come asking you, can I use, AI tools like ChatGPT or Claude? Do you encourage students to use, or, it's not, it can't be completely rejected. So have you figured out a way where they can kind of use it as an assistance, or,
Actually,
how does that?
We've never had that question. So US colleges will tell students, if you use AI tools in any way, we will disqualify your application. Every single college in America will say that. If you touch that, the end. And I think that has scared students so much that no one has ever asked us that question. We've actually never gotten that question.
Wow. Okay.
Because, I will use ChatGPT for a couple little things that I'll do, here on a day-to-day basis. So, and all the students are using Grammarly. So the Grammarly is like the little grammar tool. I think that's fine, but I don't think I've ever had a student come to me where it's like a very obviously AI written essay. Maybe some students, they'll do it behind the scenes and they won't tell me about it, and then we'll edit it a little bit. But I think that's actually not a problem we've had because so many colleges will tell students, don't use this, otherwise you're done. And I think a lot of schools and teachers will also discourage them from using it. Once again, I'm not an AI expert. I wouldn't be able to tell if a student came to me with a essay written one way or the other, but it's actually never been a problem for us thus far.
A problem. That's all that matters. Yeah. I think, as long as students don't come and ask you, and students are so, when colleges say it with that sort of a tone or whatever it is, fine. Yeah. But, it's like, it's mind-boggling that, because I've always seen ChatGPT as, you don't have to ideate from scratch, but, you put together the pieces and then maybe, have ChatGPT structure it or whatever it is, finish it or whatever it is. So that's where I was coming from. But got it. As of today, no ChatGPT or AI used while writing college essays. That's the thing. Great. Lisa, I'm going to go back to, when you started Invictus, you said it all started with one of the students from your varsity tutor, who just had a couple of hours, and that's where, the college essay thing started. And after that, how did you get your students for your college consulting programs?
Oh my gosh. So the first year, it was very difficult. So I had,
This was 2021.
So that student was, I want to say 2018 or 2019. So actually that was pre-COVID.
Okay.
I was still in school back then, and I did
Right.
basically tutoring as a side job just to, have some extra cash while I was in college. So that year I had that one student. The next year I had a couple students through various, other companies I worked for.
Connecting companies.
Right. At that point, I had started doing a little bit of college consulting. And then, obviously I was working full time at the company. That was like 2020, 2021. Yeah, that was 2020. I started with that full time company. And then in 2022, in January of 2022, I left that company. So I worked at that company for like a year and a half. And I left that company. And then I had a lot of part time roles, and I was taking students, college consulting students, part-time through these other companies, and they were sending me students. In terms of how I got students on my own, so that was difficult at first. So the first kind of couple students who came to me were referrals from previous students I'd worked from at.
Right. Got it.
Then I worked with those students. So the first year, I want to say I maybe had 10, 15 students we had in the whole company.
And you were a one-person company, right?
It was for the first 6 months, and then we actually started hiring 6 months in, because 10, 15 students doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot to handle with the college consulting.
Right.
Once I hit that stage, I have 15 students, we started hiring. So we hired our head of college readiness now. Back then, he was the first person we hired. His name is Dr. James Dunley. He is amazing. He's still with us. He now runs our college consulting program. So he's the kind of senior guy. So he was the first counselor we hired. And he was just, I was blown away by him. We actually just gave him a big promotion raise a couple days ago. So I think he's very happy about that. But so he's kind of our senior guy. He basically, oversees the whole program. And then from there, we have just all the counselors that he works with and manages. So we have quite a variety of counselors from all walks of life. But the first year, I would say we overhired even. So we had a couple counselors who weren't doing much. And then we had to adjust. We had to figure that out. And most of our clients are through word of mouth. So it's just clients I've worked with, and then they refer students. We do have a pretty nice referral bonus. So I think it just incentivizes a lot of people to kind of send their friends over to us. And we do get some students from just very random things. I actually had one student. So I started going a little bit of a tangent here. I started doing a lot of work with Instagram and literature, because I'm also trying to have a writing career on the side. So I started an Instagram account about 6 months ago, and it's grown actually fairly substantially. I have about 20,000 followers on there.
Oh, wow. In 6 months.
Yeah. So it's actually, I do
That's
like
great.
videos, which is why I have this background. And I love doing that. And I think a lot of people know me through that avenue as well. So we actually started clients through my Instagram. I have an intro client meeting later today with someone who she messaged me and she said, "Hey, I follow your Instagram. I'm applying to PhD programs in English literature." So great, come, we'll help out. So we have actually some clients that are now coming to us through kind of weird ways as well, which is great. And then we do have a marketing team. I think we're still trying to figure out, what is the best way to kind of just get clients through like paid ads and stuff like that. So we're playing around with advertising a little bit. We haven't been super successful with that yet, but that's fairly new. And then we also have a couple of just like websites that we're on where it's like, hey, here's the service. So it's a lot of different avenues. Sometimes there are a couple like Facebook groups that some of our moms will be in, and then they'll, recommend other people through that Facebook group. So a lot of different ways we get clients, but I would say probably 60 to 70% is word of mouth, and then the rest are just, random things here and there.
Got it. I'm more interested in, what you termed as weird. I mean, I know it may not be much,
Yeah.
but I just don't want to leave it if you can
Yeah. So,
specify.
I mean,
It might help.
one of them is I would say my Instagram, my literature Instagram. I think a lot of people are obviously interested in education, and if you're following a literature account, you're probably some way educated, right? So a lot of the people there will reach out to me and they'll say, "Hey, can you help me with whatever writing thing?" And then, as I've said, a couple of students will be applying to various programs.
Right.
I have my family members are very active in the Jewish community, as we're Jewish. So I would say that's another really big hub. My boyfriend's parents always advertise us at their local synagogue. So we've gotten some students through that avenue. So sometimes we'll go and we'll have, conversations with teachers at school. That one's a little bit less helpful, but a couple of students maybe will come in through that area. So it is really just, whatever we can think of, wherever we get clients, great. We have gotten a couple of clients through even Reddit posts. Sometimes we'll do a Facebook post somewhere. So those, once again, we get fewer clients through all of those avenues than just referrals. Referrals are also, they're the most consistent because they have that kind of trust from, usually it's a friend, right? And the friend says, "Hey, we use the service, it's great." They come in, we give them all the information, they sign up, right? They're not necessarily going out and talking to 30 different companies, versus when you do the advertising route, usually you get people who are talking to my company and then some other company and then some other random person, and then the odds that they choose you out of 10 people is maybe a little bit lower. So we do get people we talk to, we just close those clients a little bit less often.
Got it, Lisa. And I totally get it. The referrals from other students and friends is one thing, but the referrals that you get from teachers and counselors, do the teachers and counselors get paid for that?
So we have a referral bonus. It's $150 for anyone who sends us clients. So yeah, we do give them bonus. Yeah.
Okay. So do you have a tech system for that, like with a link, affiliate link and stuff like that, or is it just the word of mouth referrals happening right now?
We have a space where you fill out if you referred it. So we actually don't have anything too fancy to formally track it, but we always ask clients how did you hear about us, and we always say okay, what's the name? We make sure to track that down, and usually if a client refers, or if someone we know refers someone, they will tell us the name, and then we put that in our system, and then we'll send out that bonus.
Got it, Lisa. And you also spoke about closing. Yeah. So what's your closing rate? On an average, how many people do you meet, and what's the percentage of your closing? And do you have are you the only closer, or do you have more closers?
No, so we have Dr. James Dunley, who is our head of college readiness, he also does our sales calls. So I think we would split them about 50-50 at this point. So he does about 50% of sales calls, and I'll do the other half. So I would say I do close more than James on average. I would say together we probably close about 25 to 30% of clients, which I think is pretty decent. We're always working on how to close more clients, but I think if a client schedules that kind of preliminary consultation with us, they are already very interested. So
right,
we like to take a look at what we can then do to really entice them. I have noticed that we close more calls when the student is there for the first call. I think kids like me. I'm very energetic, and I think that when the students they go, I've obviously networked a lot in the college counseling industry, and I would say in terms of energy spectrum of college counselors, I'm very high. A lot of college counselors are very serious and maybe a little bit dull, and I think I bring a lot of energy to meetings. And I think the moment that the kids you get a 15-year-old kid in front of me, I'm very good at convincing them that I'm going to be good at working with them, and I think the kids love working with me. So we close, I would say, almost all calls where the kid is present in that first sales call. So I always want the kid to be there, because then what happens is, even if the parents are like, oh, it's too expensive, it's too this, it's too that, the kid is like, no, like, I want to work with Liza, that's it. And then the parent will be like, okay. I had a client a couple months ago who, she emailed me, and her kid was there for that initial sales call. She emailed me and she said, well, like, we were going to interview like all these other companies, and my daughter said, no, like, I only want to work with Liza. I'm not going to interview anyone else. I refuse to have college counseling unless it's with Liza. So the mom was like, okay, I guess we have to sign up now. So we get that a lot. So I always try to get the kids to be there on that sales call. We close almost all of them, unless for whatever reason the kid and I don't get along personality wise. But I think the main reason probably that, you know, parents will look elsewhere is we're just a new company. So because we've only had kind of 2 years of being around thus far, that will sometimes give parents, I think, a little bit of pause. So we always try to convince them that, you know, we do well. You know, I'm also fairly young, all things considered. So I think that a lot of parents are like, okay, well, how do we trust this person? So, but, you know, the moment I get in front of the kids, they're like, okay, we're sold.
Got it. Because I was going to ask you, what do you think would be the reason the others don't convert or close? And one of the reasons you said is they might think you're pretty new. Are there any other reasons? Has price ever been a problem?
Yeah, price for sure. I would say that probably the biggest thing is people think I'm inexperienced, because I am on the younger side, just, you know, realistically speaking. So I think people will, you know, maybe want to work with someone a little bit older. Hopefully, you know, as we're, you know, we stick around for a little bit longer, and as I get older, then that'll be less of a problem. I always try to look older on the sales calls to convince parents that, which is the only time in my life ever I will need to look older than I actually am. So I always try to do that. I think sometimes, you know, James is also, James is in his 30s, so he's also a little bit on the younger side. So, you know, we try to figure out how to balance that. And then, you know, obviously we've been around for a little bit less. We did just join the, what's it called? The International, Independent College Consulting Association. I forget what it stands for, but it's this big association. So we did just join it. So I think that has been helping us a little bit, that we have that official kind of stamp of, you know, we've been verified, we're good to go. So that would help. There's another organization that we're eligible to join once we're 3 years old. So we're going to also try to join that in January. We're actually going to be 3 years old. So we're going to start to join that.
There's another association that might help. It's called NTPA, National Test Prep Association.
Yeah, so we can take a look at that. So all of those, we have those on our radar. They usually need you to be like 3 years old or something like that. So we're working on all of that. So that's actually been helping, I would say, a little bit. And then, as you said, price. So price-wise, we're positioned very interestingly. So I have a separate set of prices to work directly with me, just because I'm, you know, the founder of the company. Yeah. So the problem we have there is, because most of our referrals are coming from my personal student referrals, they all want to work with me. So when they see, you know, our price to work with other counselors is actually, I would say, very affordable compared to industry standards. So I think we're a little bit lower with the other counselors than what you would see at a comparable company. And then for my prices, we are a little bit higher than industry standard. I have very finite time in my life, and I wish I could work with every single student, but the reason we keep that price high is, you know, I can't take on every single student we get. So sometimes we do have students kind of turn away for that reason, where they'll hear about me, then they'll see my price, and they'll be like, and whatever. Sometimes we'll convince them to sign up with other counselors at the company, which I always try to do. So ideally, the ideal kind of situation for me, I think later down the road, is I want to start pivoting away from working with students directly and just running the company, because honestly, running the company takes up so much of my time as is. And then I also have student meetings throughout. So I'm very busy in that regard. So hopefully eventually we'll get enough of a reputation as a company where people don't just come to me, because I think right now we don't really have that company reputation. I have a reputation as a person. And so they sign up with me as like Invictus. But I think for us to get to the stage where Invictus has a reputation as a company and all of our counselors are great, that might take a couple more years. So we're on that road. And I think the more of our other counselors who work with students, the more we'll get there.
Got it, Lisa. Lisa, you said you started your Instagram page 6 months back, right? It's just been 6 months.
Yes, I started in May. Yeah, those 7 months. Yeah.
Okay, so what would you say has been the difference before and after that Instagram page?
Yeah.
From the company's growth point of view. I mean, okay, let us put it like this. Tell me in different ways, in whatever way you like. Probably the way I would love to hear it is from a student enrollment point of view and from the hirings point of view. What has been the change before and after the Instagram page?
So I would say it's even more than the Instagram. So I've always wanted to be a writer. That's been in the back of my mind. Always, I'm still trying to get there. It is very, very hard to break into the publishing industry as a new writer. So I've had to be a little bit sneaky in terms of making my name as a writer. And I never really tried doing it. I was so busy running Invictus that I really just didn't have time to do it, honestly. And then This year, we have more of our counselors taking students. I have slightly fewer students than last year and the year before that. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I have a little bit more time on my hands. Let me try to be a little bit more serious about establishing my name and reputation as a writer. So I started doing Instagram, and I started a YouTube channel as well that's dedicated to kind of like writing and literature. And I also started writing articles. So before I would only write, I'm working on a novel. So I really would only write the novel. And then I thought, well, I need to get my name out there somehow. So I started writing shorter form articles and submitting them to various journals. I started a little publication of my own over on Substack, which also has about 2,000 readers now, which is pretty good. And I've seen that within these like little niche spaces, I have developed a little bit of a name for myself in the writing world. I'm actually currently working on incorporating all my writing stuff that I do as like a one venture. It's called Pens and Poison. I'm working on getting that into an LLC as well, because I've actually started making money from that as well. So that, I think, has given me a little bit more of a reputation as a writer. I have articles everywhere. Now when you Google me, I'll come up as a human. like Google will show my photos and all of that. And I think to parents, that's pretty impressive. And they'll see me, they'll see I have like a following. They'll see I have articles published. I have a lot of articles published on education. I write a lot about education. So I have some articles published in like education journals. So I think that has helped a lot, where if parents go ahead and Google me, they'll see that I have a little bit of legitimacy. So I think that's actually helped us close clients as well. I had one student we just closed. She told me that we actually just recently got a cat last week. So I posted my cat to my Instagram. And so the student we just closed, she follows me on Instagram, and she said, like, one of the reasons I wanted to work with you is I love your cat. Which I thought was the most adorable thing ever. Just random things. There's so many random reasons I think that, students and parents will like decide to sign up. But this particular student is like obsessed with my cat. So, and I think we get along very well as well. So I think the kids now, they might, follow me on Instagram. They might just, have a sense of who I am, and they have a good sense of my personality from my videos. So I think that might also draw people in. So I think just kind of twofold, establishing just a presence as a writer has helped, because then parents know that they can trust me with the college essay. That's kind of part one. And then part two is I have a little bit of a public persona where my work is more easily accessible. You can just kind of look me up. You can look up my videos, and it's very easy to just get a sense of my personality and how I would work with students now that I have all of those videos up. So I think that maybe will help parents and students make their decisions as well.
Got it. So Instagram is one thing, but your Substack and all the writing things that you've done is a major contributing factor.
Yeah.
Substack is 2000, but so you haven't been able to figure out if there's been a difference Instagram has made. So the only way I think you'd know is through the DMs that you get on Instagram, right?
Yeah. So once again, as I've said, I have a student, new potential student I'm meeting with this afternoon, who found me on Instagram, and she messaged me, and I gave her, my work link, and she scheduled a meeting with me. So we'll see how that goes. So there have been a couple students from that. We do always, once again, we always ask students where they're coming from. I have, I think, 3 sales calls this week. One of them is the Instagram one. One of them is a referral, and the last one's also a referral. So yeah, so it's mostly referrals, but I do think it's helped a little bit.
Got it, Lisa. Before I, ask my next question, a slight detour. Have you heard of Nicholas Cole?
I have not. No.
Okay, cool. Lisa, it was very interesting to, listen to you talk about closing, and those are like, sales rated stuff. Usually writers and, the background that you say you come from would, whinge at the sound of sales, or sales would be the most difficult thing. So, is sales, does sales come naturally to you, or is that when you were 18 years, the tutoring that you did you pick it up from that, or, or did you why do I think you are good with sales while I don't expect you to be?
Yeah, so I alluded to this in the very first answer I gave to the very first question. Is I didn't fit in with the kind of standard writing space because I'm a little bit more of a social person, I would say, compared to your average writer or compared to your average reader. So I think there's a lot of, stereotypes around readers and writers, which is true, that they're a little bit more like maybe idealistic and not as good with business things. I happen to have a very entrepreneurial mindset. I'm not quite sure where I got it from. I never studied business. I was never very good with like numbers or anything like that, but I'm very much like a go-getter. I think it's just from honestly just a product of living in Manhattan. I think it's just everyone in Manhattan is like so like they do their thing, and it's very much like an entrepreneurial go-getter setting. And I think that just being in Manhattan for so long, I think I just probably picked up a lot of that. And I'm also, a lot of the closest people in my life, I would say, are kind of in the business space. Most of my friends are in finance. I think I'm around those sorts of people actually more than I am like the literature writing people. I just, once again, personality wise, maybe don't get along with them as much. So, and the other thing is I had to figure out how to start a business, right? So a lot of that, it was kind of just trial and error. I had to learn how to do it. I had zero kind of business entrepreneurship background coming into this, but I, just very like creative, out of the box thinker, I would say. So that all just started to come naturally to me as I started doing it. And I think that's part of the reason why in 6 months I've been able to kind of establish a name for myself as a writer. I think a lot of that has to do with like my entrepreneurial thinking, because I now interact with more writers from like Substack, for instance, is primarily like a social media for writers, you could say, right? And I interact with a lot of writers there who have, been there for like years and years and years and haven't really figured things out. And they all ask me, okay, well, how did you get, my Substack's been around for like 4 months. How'd you get 2,000 subscribers in 4 months? It's like, well,
wow. Is that free or paid Substack that you're running?
They're free for now, but that's still pretty good. I have about like 50 paid subscribers at this point. So, I've started to make a little bit of money from writing, which is nice. Always doesn't hurt. So I've said, okay, well, I approach this kind of from an entrepreneurial perspective as well, of like, how do I write something that people will be interested in reading, right? I think a lot of writers are so like personal that they write things for themselves. And I like to write things for myself as well, but I also say, okay, well, what is going to be helpful for people? I started a series. I finished a novel, trying to publish a novel right now. I started a series recently that's called My Journey to Publication, where I essentially document where I'm going with my novel. And It's like a little newsletter almost where I talk about like what's happening from week to week. And I thought, okay, well, if I just talk about myself and what I'm doing, nobody's going to read that. Nobody cares like
Right.
what step I am in. And that's that's a small part of it. But every week I talk about, okay, let's talk about some tips and tricks. Here's what I learned this week about getting your novel out there. Let's talk about how to reach out to literary agents. Let's talk about the publishing industry. Let's talk about, how to deal with rejection. I just had a post come out this morning that's like how to deal with rejection as a writer. So I don't just make it about myself. I do a little bit, but I also think about, okay, what do other writers want to read? And I think that's why I've gotten so much traction, is because I identify like these angles that I think would resonate with people, and then I put that in my Substack, and I've gotten just like so many subscribers from that perspective, even though I literally just didn't have a name for myself as a writer until about a couple months ago. So that, I think, is something that I always encourage more writers to do, is to think about things a little bit outside of the box, a little bit outside of yourself, because it's great to be like private. And I think a lot of these introspective thoughts are the reason that a lot of writers want to write, because they want to, talk about what's going on in their brains, and that's fine. But I think also pairing that with sort of more of an entrepreneurial mindset, I think would really help a lot of writers get ahead in life.
Got it, Liza. Liza, so I just, I'm just trying to map your distribution, right? Be it for Invictus as well as your other stuff. So what was the first social media handle that you started? Was it Instagram or was it YouTube?
Yeah, so I actually started my YouTube for my Pens and Poison in college. I didn't do much with it. I maybe did, and back then I was like 19, and I had no idea how to do anything. I just put a couple of videos up. It was like, some of them were just like me reading my poetry. Some of them were like little poetry analysis videos. And then I kind of stopped it. I had like 200 subscribers. I was like, whatever. It's not going anywhere, and I had other things to do. And then a couple years later, and I think this whole thing maybe started from that, I opened it and I noticed that one of my videos got like 12,000 views that I shot when I was like 19. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of cool.
Yes.
Like, people are watching my videos. And I said, okay, well, maybe there's like value in getting back to this. I need to do more YouTube stuff, because I don't do YouTube as aggressively as I do Instagram, but I do have actually 22,000 subscribers on YouTube at this point. But I need to make more long form videos. I think they just take a little bit longer than the reels on Instagram. I do these like, 30-second reels, and they're very quick to shoot. They're very quick to edit, and then I just put them up and then the end. So that, I think if I do more of the long form videos, I'll do that. But I started the YouTube first. Then I was posting YouTube shorts there. Then I also started the Instagram. I wasn't even going to do an Instagram for the longest time. I thought the idea of making reels was a little bit silly. And then I just, I was like, whatever, let's just do it. I had 200 Instagram followers for a little bit, and then it just I had a couple videos that just exploded. One of my videos got like 1 million views. So that, couple of those videos, I think, just helped me gain that follower base. And now I have like, someone wrote to me yesterday. I was just, this just warmed my heart. Someone like put a comment on one of my videos, and I just liked the comment, or I responded to it, I remember, and then they wrote back like, oh my god, Liza just acknowledged that I exist, like, this made my day, this makes me so happy.
This was on YouTube.
This is on Instagram. I thought that was so cute. Like, oh my god, like I never actually thought that, like, okay, I have 20,000 followers now, like, people are like, I have like fans. It's kind of cute, because I really just started this a couple months ago, and I'm still a very normal person with a normal life who just exists. I'm not like famous or anything like that. So I thought that was a really nice touch, that it's kind of showing me that, the more I build this thing, the more I actually might get to the point where, people know me. And I think, that doesn't hurt also.
Yeah. So do you have your Invictus and Substack link on Instagram bio?
Yeah, so I have a little link in bio page where you can just access all of my links. So in there I have, let me just pull it up.
And you also talk about Invictus on your Instagram page?
I do. So I'll talk about that in just a second. So I have a link in bio page. It has my website, my personal website with all my stuff, and then I have my Substack. I have a link to my poetry books, and then I have Invictus, a link to schedule a trial call with Invictus. So I think we've gotten a couple of consultations that way, and then I have just like a support my work on Patreon. So, and then I have a little merch shop as well. So that's kind of the links I have there. And then the way that people figure out that I do Invictus through my Instagram is we do these like collab reels. So I have a couple of reels I do where it's like we joint post it with the Invictus account. And I think those usually
Right,
get a lot
right.
of traction. So that's kind of how I also tend to promote Invictus a little bit on my Instagram. I had a video I did recently that's like top 10 universities for English majors, which I think fit both with Invictus and with, you know, the Pens and Poison thing that I do. So I think that was actually really nice because I got to make these like collab videos. I have a couple other ones that are like, I have a video that's like read my college essay. So I think those collab videos really do help, and they help us get followers on the Invictus page. I actually should do more of those. And then I have a marketing team. We have a marketing team is 3 people right now, so they run our Invictus page. We're almost at 1,000 followers for Invictus. That one's not growing as quick as the Pens and Poison, obviously, but we're steadily climbing there as well. So we're hoping to get more of a follower base, and also hopefully start to get people from social media as well.
Got it, Lisa. Lisa, probably just a couple of more topics that I want to touch on we spoke largely about college consulting. You said test prep is handled by another team. So let's say, Invictus as a whole, what's the split between college consulting business and the test prep business? Do you use it 50-50, or is it majorly college consulting?
Yeah, so I would say it's majorly, I think it's 70% college consulting and like 30% test prep. So I would say mostly college consulting. We also make most of our money through college consulting. Our test prep honestly is not a very good business model. I do that on purpose because we compensate our counselors and tutors very highly, I would say, compared to industry standards. The reason I do that is because I was on the other end of working for these companies that were charging a lot of money and then paying me nothing. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to pay my counselors very well so that they do a good job and that they stay with us. So that's actually, I do pride myself on, for a small company, we pay very well, hourly rate. So because of that, tutoring rates, we're still obviously making a little bit money off tutoring, but it's nothing substantial. So our tutoring service, I would say, is almost there as like a reel in for the college consulting. So they tutor with us and they have a good experience. And then we say, hey, do you need college consulting? So it's almost like a way to convert clients to the college consulting. And that's where we like really make our money, on the college consulting. I've experimented with kind of raising our tutoring prices. And I think just because tutoring is a little bit more of a competitive industry, there are just more tutors than college counselors. It's hard for us to keep prices very high for tutoring and close any tutoring clients. So our tutoring prices are actually fairly low, because the way we get tutoring clients is we just say, hey, well, you're working with the same people, but we're cheaper than everyone else. And then college consulting, that's where we really like close people.
What's the sweet spot when it comes to tutoring that students or parents are willing to pay? What's average like in the US?
Yeah, so we charge for tutoring. We charge between 100 and 150 per hour, depending on the subject, which I know sounds high.
Which is expensive. Okay.
Yeah, that's about that's actually, I would say, a little bit lower than most big companies are charging for like SAT tutoring, like with someone with an Ivy League degree, let's say, right? College counseling, we're charging $150 to $350 usually per hour. So it's a little bit on the high. It's a little bit higher than tutoring. So we're at the point now where the tutoring, I think that 100 to 150 range, I think is good for us because we still make money.
Is this a transparent thing amongst your counselors?
Sorry.
The prices that you is this a transparent thing amongst your counselors? Do your counselors know how much the company charges them? So should I edit this out?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, it's I
because you have 20K following. I mean, I don't think none of my guests have had that much following.
Maybe edit this out, but I'll just tell you, just so you know. So my assistant knows, and I do have them sign NDAs. And then our James, obviously, who does sales calls, he knows, and that's it in the company. I think they have a sense of what we charge. I don't think they're like under the impression that they're taking home 100.
As long as they're happy with their hourly pay.
Right. Yeah, and we pay our counselors usually 60 to 80 an hour, which is I would say very good.
That's about par.
Yeah, that's I was making when I was working for other college consulting companies. I was usually making 40 to 60 an hour for most companies that I was working for. So I wanted to kind of give more than that because I think that $40 an hour for college consulting is just very little. There's so much extra work that goes into it that I do think that 70 to 80 an hour is usually what you're looking at in terms of counselors who are very prepared and ready to go. And it's it sounds easy, like, okay, you're just gonna sit here editing some essays, or you're gonna suggest some summer programs, but like really helping students navigate this whole application process really takes a lot of expertise and experience, and it's a lot of preparation behind closed doors that our counselors are expected to do. So we comp them very high for so that they feel comfortable with what they're doing. And I know the industry very well. I've worked at like 7 or 8 different college consulting companies. No one really pays higher than that. There are maybe a couple companies that will like go up to 100 an hour for counselors. There's like really 1 or 2, and those tend to charge like 1,000 an hour for college counseling. So I think we actually hit a really nice sweet spot, and I think by like keeping my prices a little bit on the higher side, we're also able to kind of recover some of those costs as well.
Got it, Lisa. And to the counselors, or anybody who are interested, what's your hiring process for counselors like?
So this is something that I also really wanted to be careful about, because I sat through the hiring process of about 7 to 8 companies. Most of the hiring process for these companies is very little rigor. And I think that actually surprised me. It was the ease with which I was just able to randomly, I was like 22, 23 back then, and I got like 7 or 8 jobs in college counseling. Obviously, like I know how to pass an interview. I know what I'm talking about. So that probably contributed to it, but I think it was just a little bit too easy for me to get all those jobs. And I think that there are maybe a little bit lower barriers to entry. And a lot of these companies, all they care about is, do you have an Ivy League degree? If you do, great. And we also mostly hire counselors with Ivy League degrees. That's not because I think counselors with Ivy League degrees are more qualified. That's just what parents want, right? They see a little bit more from someone who has an Ivy League degree. I think maybe that's even a little bit unfortunate, but whatever. It is what it is. So we primarily hire counselors with Ivy League degrees unless I really see something exceptional in the counselor. And we have a 3-step process. So first we'll do a preliminary intro call. Usually that's either with my assistant or with James or just one of our other team members who does hiring. That will, there are kind of a wide variety of questions. There are some like behavioral based questions. There are some like situation based questions where we'll ask them, okay, like let's say you had a client and they came to you with this problem. How would you manage this problem? Half of this job is really just managing when parents aren't happy. That's, I think really half of it is some parents, we have a lot of like very anxious parents. And I think when you're so anxious about something, it's hard to think clearly and you think that everything is wrong. So half of it is just quelling parents' anxieties. So we make sure that counselors are equipped to handle that those sorts of problems, because I think that's the number one surprise that counselors will maybe have, is that they expect, they're doing a good job and everything is smoothly, and then the parent is unhappy with something. And 90% of the time when the parent is unhappy with something, it's nothing to do with what the counselor did. The parent is just a little bit, crazy about this whole process. And that's fine. That's just anxiety and normal nerves, but we have to help them navigate that. So we make sure that they know how to navigate that. And then in that, kind of initial screening, we also take a look at the counselor's personality, right? Regardless of how smart you are and how knowledgeable you are about the process, you have to be able to talk with kids, right? We found away so many counselors because they're too quiet or they're too boring. And that has nothing to do with their qualifications. It's just they would not do well with 17-year-olds. That's just the reality of it. So I think I like to hire people who are a little bit more engaged and have more outgoing personalities, because you need to be able to work with a wide variety of kids. And we actually, one of the first counselors I hired before I, really figured out what I was doing, she was, very qualified on paper, had all these degrees and all of this. And she was just, her personality, I think, was a little bit off-putting. And, once you got to know her, maybe it was better. But in an initial meeting, her personality was so off-putting. She had 0 clients. And the way we, the way we do the selection process is we let the students meet the counselors, and the students can tell us which counselor. Right. So she had 0 clients. And so I learned from that, okay, she was very qualified, but she just didn't have the personality for it, and that's fine. And she ended up leaving because we weren't sending her clients, because she was just, unable. We sent her so many clients to, attempt to close, and then she just, no one wanted to work with her. So that's one of the things we do. Then the next part is we screen them for writing. This is something that I was absolutely appalled by when I was doing when I was going through the hiring process myself, is barely any companies really care about how you write and edit, which shocked me, because that's half of the job, is you're helping students write and edit. I always ask for a writing sample. If you can't write by yourself, then you're not going to be able to help someone write. So if your own writing is bad, then, the end. Then we give them an editing task, and I give them an essay that was written by an actual student of mine from a couple years ago. And it's one of the worst essays I've ever read in my life. And I give them that essay, and, figure out, if you got this essay, what would you do with it? And half of it is grammar edits, but the other half of it is giving feedback that the student will be receptive to, because you can't just tell the student your essay is crap. You need to redo it. You have to give the student constructive feedback, right? And so some counselors we interview will basically say, this essay is terrible, let's rewrite it. And we can't hire someone like that, because you can't tell a kid that, because then they're going to be upset. Right. And what you want to do is you want to minimize sort of the anxiety and the nerves here. So the other thing I look for in the hiring process is, what are the notes that these counselors leave on these documents, and would a student read that and be like, okay, great, I'm happy with this feedback, I'm going to rework it. So that's the other thing that I look for, is how would you communicate with a student? Not just, are you a good writer, but how would you communicate edits to a student? And then the last thing we do is we do a little mock student call. So we have, we send them a little document with a fake student profile. And then we have one of our counselors pretend to be an annoying 15-year-old kid. We do it with our youngest counselor, who's 23. So we do it with her, and she, she'll do everything. She'll pretend to be a student, and she'll pretend to be annoying. And then we see how a counselor would interact with a student. And we have that call recorded, so I always watch it. I make sure the interactions are good. I turned away this guy with a Princeton PhD and a Stanford undergrad. He was very good with the first 2 steps of the interview, and I turned him away because he just was not able to engage a student. He just was he was talking to the student like they were an adult.
Yes.
There are a couple things where sometimes most of our counselors are part-time. Sometimes, we'll hire someone who has a corporate job, and they'll come to a student call and they'll be like, good morning, where are you calling in from today? It's well, you don't talk to a 16-year-old kids like that, right? That is, it's a little bit different from, what you would expect. So those are little things that we look for. And I really make sure that our counselors really tick all of those boxes before hiring. So, our counselors,
It's the little things.
They have complained to me that our hiring process is too much. And I say, well, listen, like, we're paying you a lot. We're charging parents a lot for this. Like, you got to be perfect. I'm not going to hire just whoever. And I think that's maybe part of the problem with this college consulting industry that I've seen is a lot of companies will just hire whoever. And I think that's tough. And at the end of the day, you really need to hire people who know how to interact with kids. And I think that's the number one thing that is really, really important in this process.
Got it, Liza. Liza, just the final question. What is the biggest top 2 problems that you're trying to solve at Invictus today?
Yeah. So I would say, the big...
currently.
Yeah, immediate problem for us is our seniors are going to be leaving in January. So we need new clients for January to keep the business running. So we need to start being more aggressive with marketing. Probably right around now, I really start to ramp up marketing efforts, usually late November. Right now probably would be a good time to start thinking about that because we're going to lose a lot of clients in January because they're going to be done with the application process. So we need to get more clients. So that's kind of the big problem. That problem, it stresses me out every year, and every year we get through it. So I'm trying not to be stressed about it. And that's number one. Number 2, I would say, is really reputation and growth. That's kind of more of a long-term problem. So we're making money. We're definitely, bringing in a lot for being around for just 2 years, which is great. But we've been a little bit stagnant for the past couple of years. So we've been experimenting with ways to grow the company. It is very expensive. We've purchased a couple of additional services, so we have really high expenses as well. So the challenge, I think, is to balance, okay, well, we need to kind of invest up front in order to grow the company, but what is the kind of budget that we're comfortable working with where we're making a good investment, but the company continues growing? So that's something that I think has been stumping us a little bit. And then how do we get the reputation? How do we get more of a reputation as a bigger
What are the services that you're talking about?
Yeah, so we just purchased Zoom Pro for all of our counselors. So before we would just have each counselor would just, they would have their own kind of Zoom accounts.
Right.
And half of them would be like free accounts. And so that's not very professional. So we bought Zoom for all of our counselors. We have about 20 counselors. Zoom was very expensive. To pay for 20 Zoom Pro accounts, that was a very big investment upfront for us. So that that was very big. We also were working with a couple of developers right now to work out a client portal. Very expensive. So those are things that I think will, in the long run, help us grow. But upfront, it is a very big upfront cost. So we're trying to balance that and figure out what makes the most sense for us to do. And we actually did end up laying off a couple of people, unfortunately, because I wanted to prioritize some of these like services that we're investing in rather than kind of paying humans to do it. So it's always a trial and error process, and we're always seeing what makes the most sense. And I think it's almost like a little puzzle for me, and I do think it's one of the biggest parts that I enjoy is like balancing everything and figuring out, what the next step for growth is. And I think that's maybe one of the things that I wasn't expecting to enjoy so much coming from not a business background, but I really do like the kind of ins and outs of running a business. I think it's very fun for me.
Yeah, I see that. Liza, thank you so much. It was absolute fun talking to you and learning your methods, which have been very different from, the usual ones that I come across. Of course, you have the referrals and all of those things, but, your other writer profile is playing a very different sort of a role for your business. And this is amazing. There are a lot of things that a lot of people should take away from this. That's the reason I was asking you more about the content you put out, Instagram and all of those things. It makes a difference when the founder puts themselves out there on social media, especially in a business like this where, you've got teenagers involved. It builds a lot of trust.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed this conversation, and looking forward to seeing this up.